You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonagh.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a new season. Today, I'm starting the year off with a declaration. Not a prediction, not a trend forecast, not a New Year's resolution, because let's be real, those fade by February anyway, if they haven't already. A declaration. Earlier this month, I declared the Professional Communicators Word of the Year on LinkedIn. It's something I do every year. Last year's word was no, and not a literal no, more like a vibe. A vibe to bring better boundaries for communicators and a consultative approach to our work. And frankly, to protect the audience from way too much information, which then causes tune out. No was a vibe in 2025. The kind that guides people to know themselves, meaning asking the right questions, getting them to see the things that you already see, right? No without actually saying no. And there was a time for that. And we do have to continue with it. Boundaries are critical. And we are advisors, not waitresses, as I call it, or waiters. But 2026 is bringing a different kind of energy for so many reasons. And yes, I will get into it. But first, the word. Without further ado, in case you missed it. The official word for communications professionals in 2026 is authority. That's right, my friends. Authority. Now, I know that word can land a little heavy for some people. For some of you, it might feel energizing, but for others, it might feel uncomfortable. And for few of you, I don't know, it might even feel out of reach. So let's slow this down and unpack it. Because when I say authority, I'm not talking about hierarchy. I'm not talking about control, and I'm definitely not talking about ego. I'm talking about something that's much more fundamental. And here's why. Communications professionals are tired. And I don't mean the normal kind of tired that comes with hard work or big responsibility. Not even the kind of tired that comes after a crisis like COVID or a year of instability like 2025. I mean the kind of tired that comes from being deeply accountable, but not deeply empowered. We're asked to protect the brand, to safeguard trust, to manage reputation, risk, culture, but far too often we're brought in too late to actually do any of that. We're often given partial context, which being real is a norm, and we have to go seek the full context, but it can often be too late. We don't have the time for that. We're asked to make it sound good, or worse, to clean things up after bad decisions are already made. We're expected to, quote, make it land, unquote, without having had any influence on what it actually is. That's not a capacity issue, and it's not a resilience issue. It's not even an expertise issue, and it's definitely not a motivation issue. That's an authority issue. And it's why so many brilliant communicators feel stuck. It's why burnout shows up even in roles that look successful on paper. And it's why leaders leave the role for other positions like chief of staff or head of marketing or something else in a related field. And it's why responsiveness gets rewarded while judgment gets sidelined. Let me say that part again. Responsiveness gets rewarded while judgment gets sidelined. That is not where we want to be. Authority is the missing piece. Now, let's talk about what authority actually means in communications. We have to be very clear about this because the word gets misunderstood, kind of like our field. Authority doesn't mean you dominate conversations, and it doesn't mean you always get your way. And it definitely does not mean that you outrank the people that you work with. I mean, no communicator would get anything done if that were the case, because most of the communications leaders out there are advising people who are 2 or more levels above where they are. The VP advising the CEO, for example. Authority just means that your perspective carries weight. It means that when you raise a concern, it's taken seriously. When you ask a question, people pause. When you offer a recommendation, it influences the direction. Authority means that being invited into the conversation before there's something to announce is done regularly. It means leaders come to you for counsel, kind of like they would other leaders, like the CFO or the general counsel. It means that your role is recognized as one that helps the business think, not just speak. That one again, so critical here. It means your role is one that is recognized as a role that helps the business think, not only speak. Authority is built through how you show up, how you think, what you ask, how you advise, and how you consistently lead with perspective instead of reaction. And some communicators, some of them lose authority without even realizing it. Many communications professionals learned early in their careers that being helpful was the fastest path to success. Fast turnarounds, flexible boundaries, always saying yes, always finding a way. Those of us who grew up in the agency world can double down on this experience. Now, if you haven't listened to it already, I did an episode on this. It's all focused on what not to bring over from the agency world when you enter corporate. I'll put the link in the show notes in case you're interested in going back to listen to that. But anyway, back to being helpful. Helpfulness gets rewarded, it gets celebrated, it gets promoted until it becomes the expectation. And over time, helpfulness turns into overfunctioning. Overfunctioning turns into dependency. And dependency quietly erodes authority. Because when your value is tied to speed and service, your judgment becomes optional. You become indispensable at execution, but invisible at decision making. And now I want to be clear here, because that is not a personal failure. It's not. It's not a personal failure. That's conditioning. It's conditioning in this kind of corporate environment. And it's conditioning that many of us learned earlier on in agency world. But advisors, you want to get to that place. Advisors operate differently. They don't rush to respond. They ask clarifying questions. They force the organization to slow down. They think in trade-offs, not just tactics. And they understand second and third order impact. Advisors don't just ask, what do you want to say? In fact, I don't ever really advise people saying that. Advisors ask, what problem are we solving? Who actually needs to hear this? What happens if we do this now? What risk are we carrying if we don't? And when you earn that place as an advisor, those advisors, they can more often tell the room the risks, the audience, and the problems being solved, and then ask for just validation on that. And yes, the shift can feel uncomfortable, because when you stop over-delivering on execution, people notice. When you stop reacting immediately, people test the boundaries. And when you start pushing back thoughtfully, it can feel like you're rocking the boat. This part's critical. I do not advise you start doing this out of the blue. That could create some real frustration for your senior leaders, and it would put you, the field, your team, everything at risk. This is why I approach strategic planning the way that I do, using it as a tool and a time to recalibrate the way that leadership looks at communications. And it works. Leadership gets aligned with new, higher expectations of communications as a function, And by higher expectations, I don't mean delivering more stuff. I mean, you can't do more. I get it. I mean more in terms of expecting more business impact. It's recalibrating expectations, using the tool of an outside advisor who points the spotlight at you in the best way possible and aligns those senior leaders to level up their expectations. That's when authority starts building. Because authority is not a single conversation. It's built in dozens of small conversations. It's built when you say, I need more context before I can recommend an approach. It's built when you say, let's talk about the audience impact here before we finalize this. It's built when you say, that timing introduces risk, and here's what I'm concerned about for the organization's financials or operations or increased regulation risk or whatever real world implication that you want to call out that will speak business to them. That's why I call it being a communications business advisor. It's built when you say, we should be in the conversation earlier next time, and here's why. That here's why is critical. And importantly, that why you should be involved earlier is not about you deserving to be in the room earlier, or because you're deserving of respect, or because it makes your job easier on the team, or anything like that. It's about business impact of not involving you earlier. Keep that in mind. It's about the business impact of not involving you earlier. It's not about you, and it's not about your team. Authority sounds calm, measured, and grounded. It doesn't rush, and it doesn't over-explain, and it doesn't require you to be perfect. Especially the women out there, I want you to hear that. It doesn't require you to be perfect. But consistency, it does matter. You're retraining people how to think about you. Now, here's something important. If you've spent years being rewarded for being helpful, your environment might resist this at first. They probably will actually resist this, and it will be really uncomfortable. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that the system is adjusting. People will ask, even when they're clear on the strategy and what are the priorities and what your new role is and how you're rethinking the function, they will ask, can't you just do this quickly? And why is this taking longer? That's not feedback on your competence. That's feedback on a role change. And role changes take time to stick. But be sure, again, before you do any of this, be sure you have alignment on that change and expectations before you go acting on it. I can't insist on that enough. If you abruptly shift in your behavior and how you treat people and how you respond, people will see you as just difficult and challenging, not focused on the business and all you can bring to it at a different level, which is what you're trying to do. You're trying to focus on the business and all you can bring to it. But they won't see it that way. To do this, you do need some sort of reset to actually make this work. Now, I do it with my strategic planning process as the method to achieve that reset, and it works. My clients have gotten doubled budgets, more than doubled staff, promotions, all in environments where nothing changed, nothing other than just me coming in to help that communicator, to partner with them and achieve that reset using the strategic planning process as the way to do it. Because I knew that the head of communications was fed up, and they would tell me that they wanted to be more proactive and planful and impactful and strategic. But what they really wanted, what they actually wanted, was an entire shift in how they were treated and the work they were doing. So we did both. Delivered a strategic communications plan working alongside them that aligned with the business goals, and also reset how the leadership team looks at the function, what they expect of it, and how they treat them. So here's my challenge to you this year. Stop asking how to be more visible and remembered. Start asking how to be more authoritative. If you're a senior leader in communications or are building towards that goal, start asking yourself these questions. Where are you defaulting to execution instead of counsel? Where are you answering instead of asking? Where are you waiting for permission that you don't actually need? Choose one place to practice authority differently this quarter. One recurring meeting, one stakeholder relationship, one decision cycle. Start there, because authority compounds. And if you have the room to consider bringing in that outside perspective to help you reset the whole tone of the function and how it's perceived, do it. It's wild how satisfying it becomes and how impactful things get. But before I go, just remember, authority is not about proving you belong. It's about knowing you already do. The business doesn't need more noise. It needs clarity. It needs judgment. It needs communicators who are willing to lead, even when it's hard and scary. Actually, especially when it's hard and scary. That's the work ahead. Now, if this episode resonated with you, then go share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And if you want deeper perspective and guidance that I only share outside social media, then sign up for my Level Up emails. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep advising, my friends. Always keep advising.
If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out taramcdonagh.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What would you tell someone who's interested in joining?
Do it. It honestly is probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my 20 plus year career.
I have received such benefit from this group. I cannot actually express it.
Invest in yourself. I really started this group because it was time for me to invest in me.
To anyone who's interested in joining Raise the Tide, I'd say the return might even end up being well beyond what you might expect. I walked in hoping for some professional clarity, and I've gotten that, but also stayed for the growth and the support and the connection that has come to mean so much to me.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to taramcdonagh.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What would you tell someone who's interested in joining?
Do it. It honestly is probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my 20 plus year career.
I have received such benefit from this group. I cannot actually express it.
Invest in yourself. I really started this group because it was time for me to invest in me.
To anyone who's interested in joining Raise the Tide, I'd say the return might even end up being well beyond what you might expect. I walked in hoping for some professional clarity, and I've gotten that, but also stayed for the growth and the support and the connection that has come to mean so much to me.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to taramcdonagh.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.